Before doing any sculpting in ZBrush whatsoever, it's really important that we have a strong foundation for a sculpt. When it comes to this, I don't mean in terms of anatomy or anything like that. I mean, or topology even. I mean purely in terms of size, location, and positioning in space. A huge issue people encounter when they start sculpting is they start with Z-spheres or Dynamesh in ZBrush, and you just start sculpting away. 4 hours later, they realize it's facing the wrong way. It's facing the back instead of the front. And this is really problematic because it can be very hard to actually fix this later on, particularly if the scale is off. So the very first thing we're going to do before doing anything else is simply setting the project up from Modo. The reason we use Modo here is, and not ZBrush, is because we control it. In ZBrush, you can't control the scale or positioning in space. So we're going to use only the default modeling tools found in Modo. And this is not going to challenge anyone's modeling skills. This is going to be the most rudimentary model we can possibly make. This is basic stuff. So we start off by holding down the Shift key and clicking on the cube. Now we have a cube. And that's great. It's centered in space. So next thing we're going to do, we're going to go to the front view. By holding on Control Spacebar, we go into the front. Then we go to View, and we go to Ruler Tool. The Ruler Tool is great because it allows us to get accurate dimensions or distance across. So if we just create it here, we can see we have 200 millimeters or 20 centimeters. I'm just going to disable snapping. And now we just moved here. I want actually the distance here is fine. I'm going to use something the average human head size, which is about 23 centimeters. This is going to probably be a bit taller than that. But this is important as well, because if you use physically based shaders, the subsurface scattering is going to be very dependent on the scale of your model. So if, for instance, this is scaled 1.5 times, that will give you issues when it comes to the subsurface scattering. So please keep this to real world dimensions. Double click the model and use the scale tool by hitting the R key. Now we can just scale it down. If you hold on Control key and drag on one of the axes, it's going to scale them uniformly. Scale it up. And that's about it. As I said, it does not have to be accurate at all. This is only to get an approximation. We're gonna sculpt the crap out of this later on, so don't worry about this. It just needs to be in the ballpark. Like, meaning it shouldn't be 100 meters, it should be about 25 centimeters. If it's 30 or 20, it's not a huge issue. Just make sure you're in the ballpark. All right, just hit escape and the ruler tool is going to be gone. Next off, we need to figure out which way is facing the front. So to do that, go to the front view. It sounds like a basic thing, but you'll be surprised how often people will mess this up and actually sculpt with the nose facing backwards, which is also a major issue. So front view, and you just simply click the polygon you see, which means this is the front. There is absolutely no ambiguity here. This is the front. I just do a quick extrude here, or quick bevel, by hitting the B key and just dragging. This way we have a clear indication which way is facing the front. And I'm not going to do any like blocking in of the character here. This is purely to have topology to work with. I'm going to add some loops in the center, just so the center is defined. Alt-C is the hotkey for loop slice, and just set one in the middle. You can use uniform or center with one count, which is pretty nice. So it's going to drop it in directly in the middle. Do the same thing here, hit Alt-C, and just click. Honestly, the topology here does not matter at all, as we will dynamesh it to death later on. Then we can just select some of these. Use extrude. By default, I believe that's Shift X. I've remapped it to Alt X, as I use Shift X for something else, which we are going to get into in a later video. Then we just scale down a bit, and this is just symbolizing the neck. Scale down, extrude down again, just to create the body, or more torso. Select either side here, hit extrude, and just scale it out. Ta-da! Maybe add a loop here in the neck. And this is literally it. We're not going to do anything more than this. As I said before, the only thing we use this for is to get the scale and positioning and the orientation to be spot on from the first moment we touch ZBrush. We now need to export this out. As we haven't saved the scene at all, we can simply hit Ctrl S, and this will save the scene for us. So let's just put this under, let's put this under a folder so it makes sense. This is important. You need to keep your OBJs from Modo or Maya or whatever you're using. I have a folder. The structure here for me is I have a folder called 3D and a folder called Geo or Geometry. In here, I have a couple of folders. I have from the various applications. So if I export something from Modo, I will always put it in here, except if it's a base OBJ. For instance, if we need to get something from Modo to Maya, I'll put it in a folder from Modo or from ZBrush. However, as this is a base OBJ, meaning this is the most basic form we're going to use in ZBrush, I'm going to make a new folder called ZBrush base OBJ, put it in here, and you have a release folder. You don't have to go this fancy here. I just prefer to really keep this under wraps so I know exactly where my files come from. So in this release folder, you can just call this head_001, if I can type. And that's pretty much it. We're gonna get more into later on why it's so important to keep your OBJs here. But for now, just don't put them on your desktop. Put it on a server or put it on your hard drive so you can easily backtrack it later on. And this is it. Make sure to change this to an OBJ and hit save. The next chapter, we're going to go into ZBrush and showing how you can set up the project.